Well, hello, everyone. We have with us today Lee Crume, who is the CEO, president of Northern Kentucky Triad, our region's economic development organization that covers all three counties, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell. So, Lee, thanks for taking a few minutes of your time today and chatting with us about what the picture looks like of economic development in our region right now under this pandemic. So, the lifeblood of your world is businesses, projects, developing, helping to bring businesses to the community and expand them. What's project flow look like? I'm assuming it's down, but is everybody not calling? Are you getting lots of inquiries? How do things look?
Well, Judge, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's glad to see you virtually. I always appreciate our time together, and I'm happy to share what we know with the folks of Kenton County. So as you mentioned, our traditional remit is to grow. We enhance and grow the economic base. We typically do that through economic development projects and entrepreneurship. No doubt the COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect on that. We've had a lot of projects that have gone on hold. Some are on hold, probably won't come back. But interestingly, though, since the beginning of March, we've had 12 new projects come into our pipeline that we're actively working on. So there are companies that are still out there making expansion and new location decisions. I should say of that 12, about half are expansions and half are new location decisions. So we are seeing some new activity, although it is a bit muted.
So, your team is still there. You're taking those inquiries and building plans, but are there any specific areas that seem like they're going to get the most attention right now that in terms of those inquiries and projects?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see an immediate bump on the supply chain side. A couple of the projects that we're working on now are supply chain related. And from everything we understand for forecasting, and that is such a difficult thing to do these days, you think about how rapidly the world has changed in 8 weeks. And so trying to think about what it's going to look like 8 weeks from now is really difficult. We do think companies are going to address their supply chain, shortening them, trying to get closer to their customers, maybe going with multiple facilities around the country as opposed to, kind of these big mega facilities. And I think we'll see some opportunity from that.
So, but prior to March and February, it seemed like we were talking about constantly the community's growth, but it was all dependent upon workforce. Yeah. We've got now unprecedented unemployment. Hopefully, as soon as businesses get back to face-to-face, more face-to-face business, that obviously drops dramatically, hopefully. But how do you think that looks in terms of bringing companies to our region and having them grow in our region with coming out of this unemployment peak that we're hitting?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. Before the COVID epidemic, we talked about work, our labor participation rate was very, very high. Our unemployment rate was very, very low. That would be, if not the number one, the top two objection we would get from clients not choosing the region. And we're going to see a flip in that for at least the short term. There's expectation rates that the labor participation rate is going to come way, way down. These are all terrible things. It's unfortunate that this is going to happen. Unemployment rate in Kentucky is over 40%. And so I do think that it's going to be advantageous for people that want to locate here or expand here in the short term, that there is this bubble in the workforce. And, our goal will be to work projects as quickly as we can to help those folks that are out of the workplace today get back into it as quickly as possible.
Lee, one of the things that people have said about Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati for a long time is that we don't have quite the highs of other parts of the country and we don't have the lows. Do you see that happening? And number two, because of our size of a metropolitan area, does that put us in a good spot or a bad spot in terms of coming out of this eventually when we can get out of this economic challenging time?
Yeah, I definitely think that is true about the highs and the lows. Maybe the recovery is a little bit slower than what some of the coastal areas would be, but you don't have the big fall off that they do either. I think the underlying, kind of the underlying bones of the region are still very good and will be good for us. Some of our key sectors in advanced manufacturing, the type of manufacturing we do, food manufacturing, our proximity in the United States to support that, all of that is still there, and I think will support us as we look to move forward.
You know, another thing, Lee, you've talked about in the past is some of our strengths is we've got so many cities, we've got so many counties, got lots of different perspectives. And, you know, as we come out of this thing as well, are there opportunities you think to talk about some of those opportunities to be even more presentable to companies when they come to the region in the future? Is there anything like that that you're seeing have bubbled up over your time here now leading Triad?
Yeah, you know, I would love, you know, when we work with clients today, and one of the challenges that we have is that we're a tri-state region. And so there's a concern over cost. There's a concern of when they start talking about incentives. You have employees that are crossing the bridge, and this happens both ways, right? And it affects our ability to be competitive. I'd like to think that this disruption will give us some opportunity to address that, to say, how do we work from an incentive policy perspective on both sides of the river so that when Ohio does a project, they don't lose out because people live and work, or, you know, live and come from Kentucky. And then when we do projects, the same thing holds true for our Ohio and Indiana employees. And we're certainly, as we have the opportunity to work with those communities, Ready, Cincinnati, and Southeastern Indiana, we're trying to foster that conversation.
That's great. So, and in this time frame, you have some success stories too, working with the Chamber and others with some business support. So maybe you could speak to that CARES Act and some of the other efforts you guys have been working on.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time. I would tell you, we are busier now than we have been, and busy not for the sake of being busy. We talk internally about doing meaningful work and trying to speed economic recovery in as many different ways as we can. As I mentioned before, a lot of that is still in our traditional work of economic development entrepreneurship, but we found other missions along the way, and we have great partners. The Regional Alliance and Karen Finance Group, the Chamber, Brent Cooper and I talk to each other literally every day since this thing has started. Nancy Grayson at Horizon, and we've partnered together on different programs. You mentioned the CARES Act. We worked with the Chamber to create a webinar series that served over 400 registrants to get CARES Act information out. Our idea was, how do we make people aware of what is becoming available and connect them as fast as possible to those resources? We did another 2 webinars for our public sector partners to help them understand what they could do to support their private industry. You know, we worked with Horizon and the Chamber again on the Restaurant Relief Fund, which created $85,000-ish of economic value for over 100 restaurants. We worked with the city of Fort Mitchell to help them do a small business grant program that created, again, about $85,000 of value for their citizens. So we've had no shortage of mission and opportunities to serve and help people.
That's awesome. Well, I know that the work that everybody's doing is very intentional there. You know, I appreciate the work that you're doing and the team's doing, and hopefully we can come out of this thing stronger than we went into it eventually here. And I know the work you're doing is going to add to that.
Well, you know, Judge, this is a hard time for a lot of people. Like, as I mentioned before, the unemployment rate, the uncertainty, it creates stress for folks. There's no doubt that's been part of the equation for our team at Triad. I'll tell you, we're blessed that we have an opportunity to serve. We're blessed that we have an opportunity to try to make a little bit of difference in this. We're not frontline responders like police and fire and St. E, but if we can do one little thing to help somebody get back to work or help a company grow or expand, then we're thrilled to be a part of the equation.
Fantastic. Well said. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Judge.